Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, I have something extra, extra special for you. Tonight, our guest is Emmitt Henderson III, better known as the Male Lupus Warrior. This is because only 10% of lupus patients are men. Males get lupus less often than females and may have different symptoms as well. For example, males with lupus may be more likely to have a discoid rash or kidney problems. The reason for the sex-based disparity is thought to be sexual hormones, differences in the immune system, and genetics. Emmitt is the CEO and founder of a group called Male Lupus Warriors. You can find that at www.malelupuswarriors.org. That link will be playing throughout the broadcast. His kidney lupus story starts when he was approximately 10 years old in 1980, when he had a rash all over his body, which they now believe might have been discoid lupus. At the time, they told him they didn't know what it was. They kept sending him home from the hospital. This lasted about a year and then went into remission until 1995, when Emmitt was diagnosed with systematic lupus, the most common type of lupus. That's abbreviated capital SLE. SLE is an autoimmune disease where the immune system attacks its own tissue, causing widespread inflammation and tissue damage that in turn affects joints, skin, brains, lung, kidneys, and blood vessels. There is no cure for lupus. 15 years later, he had joint pain in his knee and wrists and shoulders that was so bad, Emmitt went to the ER a number of times, only to be sent home with the doctors telling him we can't find anything wrong. Eventually, the pain settled all over his body, and while he continued to work full-time, have a service manager in an auto shop, this caused him increased pain in his lower back until he was forced to go to urgent care. They referred him to the hospital by ambulance for blood work. Emmitt ended up there for 3.5 weeks. Within the first 2 weeks, they had done extensive blood testing with no diagnosis. And on the 19th day, a rheumatologist told him that he may very well have a disease that is rare in men, systematic lupus erythematosus. And she told him he did not meet the normal profile. She'd need more time to run some tests to confirm. 4 days later, the diagnosis was confirmed. Emmitt began to learn about the disease. He learned it was primarily a woman's disease and rare in men, that 1 out of 10 men are diagnosed with lupus compared to women. For the first 3 years, Emmitt kind of kept this to himself. But during that period, he was getting numerous flares and hospitalized frequently. Through the years, lupus has affected almost every organ in his body, notably, by your Uncle Jim, his brain and kidneys. He has had, now get this folks, put your seatbelts on, he has had a bone marrow stem cell transplant, a kidney transplant, a right knee replacement, a left shoulder replacement, had his gallbladder removed, had lung failure, been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, Sjögren's syndrome, mixed connective disease disorder, tissue disorder, gout and shingles. He has gone through chemotherapy and radiation and has been on peritoneal dialysis for a year before his first kidney transplant. It's my understanding he's doing home dialysis now as we speak. He has had ulcers in his throat and esophagus, which has caused his throat to close, so he was fed for a time through a breathing tube. He has gone through cardiomyopathy of the heart due to heart failure, and because of heart failure, placed into a chemically induced coma. After 3 weeks, he had to go to rehab to learn how to walk, talk, and use his limbs again. He was on a 30 pill a day regimen at the peak of his usage. The steroid that he was on led him to a 45-pound weight gain. Depression became an issue, but my man Emmitt is mentally tough and fought back. As a result of his experiences, he created a not-for-profit organization called Male Lupus Warriors and became, capital letters, the voice for men with lupus, publicly advocating and telling his story and constantly inspiring others. He has had many, and I mean many, awards, accomplishments, recognitions, and achievements throughout his career. On a recent trip to Africa trying to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, he developed altitude pulmonary edema, and unfortunately, his transplanted kidney failed. He is actively seeking a new kidney. Currently, he is on dialysis and on the transplant list. Please give a warm welcome to Emmitt Henderson III, Male Lupus Warrior. Emmitt, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm blessed to be here with you, Uncle Jim. Very blessed.
So did I state everything correctly in the introduction? I'm pretty sure I mispronounced some stuff.
You know what? I think we all got the picture. I mean, I could not have said it any better myself. You did very good. Very good.
Your friend Pooby Nicole is on the line, says hello.
Hello to everybody out there watching. Thank you all for joining. You guys heard my story, but you're going to hear it in a way to where Uncle Jim is going to bring out the best of me on this one.
We hope. Please tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and your employment experiences.
Absolutely. So I am of a mixed ethnicity, Filipino and Black. I was born in the Philippines, actually, and only about a month or so later, was brought here, to the States, and grew up here in Southern California in the city of San Diego. So the San Diego is my home. I've been all over, but this is sunshine for me. And you know, my parents who raised me with my two brothers and sister, you know, we had a very good, tight relationship up to this day with all of us. I got into the car business pretty early after my high school days of being able to work on cars, being able to understand them. And then I knew I had to go to work because my son was born right after graduation of high school. So I completed high school, my son was born, and like my dad, I wanted to follow the military, but money was calling me right now. And my career took off to where there was no way of looking any other direction because how successful I was in the automotive industry and becoming management at the age of 22 years old. At 22, as you mentioned, I was going through a lot of pains with my body that I couldn't understand. But as the type of person that I was, I didn't think that going to the doctor was important for me because I was in pain, but I wasn't dead. I wasn't dying. So to me, maintaining work, maintaining my career was actually more important to me than my health at that young age in the early 90s.
Okay. Let's talk about your experiences with lupus and kidney disease and the whole 9 yards. It's my understanding that your issues with lupus began in 1980 when you were 10 or 11 years old. Can you please tell us what was going on?
Yeah, Jim, I was the only kid in playing at recess with long sleeves and a turtleneck because my body and my arms and neck had all kind of rashes on them. Not really itching, but more just kind of embarrassing as a little kid to show. So when my parents took me to the hospital because I started having a lot of fevers, they thought it was associated, but the doctors couldn't do anything to basically help me or tell me what it was. They gave me Tylenol for the fevers and just told me to stay out of the sun until they figure out what it was. After a time going by, they ended up just diagnosing me with rashes and fevers of unknown origin. They didn't know what the problems were. They even did a skin biopsy. They took a chunk out of my skin to study it, but they still had no answers or a diagnosis on it.
Okay, and now this is thought to be discoid lupus. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, when I got diagnosed in 95, the rheumatologist that I met kind of put everything together because it was the same hospital that, I was taken to in the early times, where they told me that they've had it in a certain percentage of patients where their illnesses evolved. Mine being that it was on the surface of my skin, over time evolved into my blood, which ended up becoming systemic lupus.
Okay. How long did this particular childhood rash last?
For about 15 years. Since I was about 10 years old, 1980, to actually, I take that back. It's back to 1992 is when the rash started to fade away, but then the joints pains, the fevers were still there, but the joint pains came and other associated symptoms with lupus came.
Okay, so 15 years after 1980, in 1995, you were diagnosed with systemic lupus. That
Yes.
is the most common type of lupus?
Yes, it is. The most common and also, unfortunately, the most deadliest one because it attacks all the organs. Lupus will have every organ involved with systemic lupus. I was also diagnosed in 95 with lupus nephritis, which SLE affects the kidneys, but when it affects the kidneys, they consider it a separate entity being lupus nephritis. That way, because the kidneys are very, very important that they have to concentrate on taking care of your kidney situation, and hopefully things will fall in place with everything else.
Talk to us a little bit about how you were diagnosed, your conversation with the rheumatologist. Apparently, you did not fit the initial profile for SLE.
No, and it's probably why I was there so long. The time that I got into the hospital from urgent care, I was doing almost every test that they could. I finally got to know what every doctor meant. Anything that ended with an ologist, I just about saw. The conversation at the very end, I think it was about 18 or 19 days later in, a rheumatologist, which I never heard of that title. And it was a young lady that came in and told me that she may think she knows which disease that I have. And first of all, I'm like, a disease? And then I should have known because I saw an infectious disease doctor and he couldn't tell me anything. And then here comes a rheumatologist and she says, Mr. Henderson, I believe you have this disease that it is rare for men. It's rare for your age. I remember I'm young and I'm 25. It's rare for your ethnicity. I'm Filipino and Black. And she says that she thinks that it's primarily in women. And it's called lupus. And the first thing I said, what is lupus? And of course, she tried to give me a brief summary, but all of that was just like, well, I'm still not grasping what it is because you told me it's a woman disease. I'm still on that part. I got to figure that part out first.
In your experience, men in general are reluctant to talk about lupus because it is primarily a woman's disease. And for 3 years, you were telling people it was some kind of immuno problem, right?
Honestly, I didn't even say that. In about 3 years after diagnosis, when people would ask me what's wrong, I would just tell them I'm not feeling good. Or why were you in the hospital this time? Oh, they had to check my kidney. Oh, they had to check my liver. Oh, they had to check. But I never gave the overall diagnosis of lupus. And the reason why I at the time didn't do that was because there's an ego. It could have been all kind of different things. But at that age, I had so much going for me. I didn't want to lose a step on anything. And what I mean by that, Uncle Jim, is that somebody finds out in my management position that I am sick, that might, think about replacing me. That might think about, he may not be able to do his job. So I kept it. My family's the only ones that knew, not my friends, because if somebody asked me what is lupus, I really had a hard time explaining myself. So
Yeah.
I kept it as silent and as discreet as I can.
Okay. I understand that the first 3 years after your diagnosis, you kept getting numerous flares and were hospitalized frequently, that it affected almost every organ in your body, notably your brains and and kidneys. Am I on the right track here?
Oh, you can keep going too. Yeah.
Well, I saw that there were procedures and diagnoses that included a bone marrow stem cell transplant. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Lupus had affected my heart. I went into heart failure due to cardiomyopathy, which cardiomyopathy is when your heart is not pumping enough blood to the rest of your body and starts to shut down all your organs. I was at that state. It took an experimental drug to get me turned around in the hospital with my whole family there and everything. Once I did recover from that, I did have to go to rehab because of the coma that I was put into. And it was a struggle for the next 3 months after that. Now, the doctor, my rheumatologist, that the one the same that diagnosed me, was with me this whole time and had told me that my heart couldn't withstand another flare like that. So we need to do something. She had found a clinical trial for me, which was for lupus. And there wasn't too many people that participated in it, but she thought that I was a good candidate because of how aggressive my lupus was. And that was a bone marrow stem cell transplant. That procedure took a month and a half in the hospital to do that. A lot of chemotherapy, a lot of downtime. But you know, Uncle Jim, that saved my life, man. This is why I'm here today. Part of it. Another reason that my life was saved.
You had a stroke in 2018?
While I was at work. I was at work and I was talking to a customer as a manager, and I realized that I started slurring my words, and that's all I remembered. But my secretary, who was next to me, saw a lot more that I couldn't even recall. My face kind of felt like it had drooped on one side. My words went into words you couldn't even understand. And then I ended up sitting down where she ended up calling 911. I woke up and found out that paramedics had opened up my shirt to put a patch and said that I was going through a mild stroke.
Okay. I understand that you, during this period, you also had a kidney transplant.
Yeah, and from 95 to 2012, they kind of maintained the kidneys the best they can with all of the, steroids and chemotherapy and medication. In 2012, it finally took a turn to where I was on peritoneal dialysis for 14 months. Also done at home. And then I was blessed in 2013 with a kidney from my younger brother. You say that's the second part that saved my life.
Okay. Where was this transplant done?
It was here in my home city of San Diego, California at Sharp Memorial. They are also the current hospital that is taking care of my transplant needs now.
Okay. I understand that you had a right knee replacement, a left shoulder replacement. I also understand that these things with lupus are not unusual. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, a lot of us in the lupus and autoimmune community knows that these diseases are open doors for other diseases, should I say. And once you have one, your body is very acceptable to receive more. Before the age of 25, I thought I was one of the most healthiest persons around. And then after lupus, here comes what is called Sjogren's syndrome, and then rheumatoid arthritis, and then mixed connective tissue disease. Fibromyalgia was not diagnosed because I refused to take more pain medicine. So they left it off the counter. But with the pain that I was going through, I'm sure that that's there. Even my doctor confirmed it. But it opens up a lot of different type of diseases. And one of them is a vascular necrosis. A vascular necrosis is where your joints don't get the blood flow to function, properly. So because of it, I ended up having bone to bone grinding in my both shoulders, both knees, and both hips. But my right knee, my left shoulder were the worst of it. And I ended up having to have those replaced. And I'm not talking about surgery. I'm talking about full titanium replacement on both those joints. Now, the other opposite joints, along with my hips, by the time of those two surgeries, I've kind of learned how to do a lot of self-care to avoid having those done. I just didn't see that again happening in my lifetime. Hopefully not.
You had your gallbladder removed. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was one of my latest flares in 2019 that actually was found with the brain disease that I was diagnosed with. But unfortunately with lupus, and here's how this played out, Jim. with lupus, it's kind of like, well, we don't know what's causing all these problems, but we see a slight problem with your gallbladder, so let's take that out. And I'm like, well, what do you mean, let's take that out? She said, your gallbladder is not even functioning. I said, okay, now that makes sense, but we don't know if that's the cause of what's going on. No, we don't. Okay, let's go ahead. They took out my gallbladder. So they blamed everything still on lupus, of the symptoms I was having that caused me that last flare. But it was migraines that brought me into the hospital as well. So the migraines is when they found, a neurologist had found brain patterns that he said in his 24-year career, he has not seen patterns like that.
Oof.
Yeah, I know.
Lung failure. You had lung failure. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's known as interstitial lung disease. There was a lot of times I was wheezing and breathing very hard, and that eventually built up to where it's hard to breathe now. So the emergency visit on that one turned up to be interstitial lung disease. The x-ray showed the bottom portion of my lungs was completely black, like they weren't even functioning. So I was on oxygen for about 2 months until I can get used to the rhythm of the less airflow, should I say, that I'm getting. Because of that, it exerts me to do a lot of walking, exerts me to go upstairs. But at the same time, years and years later, I've trained myself to know this. I have to pace myself in anything and everything that I do.
Okay. Gout and shingles?
Oh man, anybody that has gout can tell you gout is not fun. And one of my my fiance gets on me about a lot about this. One of my passions is chocolate, but it's also a big trigger for gout. And so I'm looking at a piece of chocolate and I'm like, is it worth it? Nah. Is it worth it? Yeah, it might be. Is it worth it? No, let's not try it. But gout is a very hard, painful illness to where the blood crystallizes, or should I say, cells crystallize in your blood that goes to the lowest point of your body, which is usually people have it in the big toe, but it can appear in any joints. It's just excruciating pain. Sometimes you have to get a straight corticoid shot right into that joint just to get some relief. I can't remember how many times I had to get that done.
Wow. I understand that you went through chemotherapy and radiation. You had ulcers on your throat and esophagus. You were being fed with a breathing tube?
Yeah, Jim, because of my lack of immunity and my immune system, I remember waking up coughing really hard one time and couldn't stop. Went to the hospital twice just for them to give me lozenges, just for them to drink warm tea. And then the third time I went to a different hospital and they had said that I had ulcers lined up from the top of my throat down to my esophagus, and my throat was near closing. So they had to put a breathing tube down into my throat. And then at that, I still couldn't even have food. So then they put a feeding tube down my nose, through my throat, and I fed on this green bag for like almost about a month, I think, until I was able to drink soup on my own. So they told me that it was, again, because of lupus and no immune system, my body is real susceptible for all these things.
Okay. You also experienced cardiomyopathy, heart failure, not a heart attack, heart failure. There's a difference. Talk to us about that a little bit.
That was the time that I ended up, that was my first near-death experience. I mean, it's something really hard to my family that had happened. And because of it, I vowed to get through anything that lupus brings to me. But, I woke up one night and I was just really sick and coughing, and I had a cold, I believe. All I remember was waking up and then laying back down. And then when I woke up again, I'm in an ambulance. And it was crazy. I was kind of out of it, but when I woke up in the ambulance, I woke up to cold ice blankets, is what they called it. I had ice blankets on. They said that my fever got up to almost 106 degrees. And so as I'm laying in the hospital, they told me that they're going to cool my body down, but they're going to have to put me under. While being under, they saw that I was going through convulsions, that my heart was not acting right. That's when they put me in that induced coma. I was in that for 3.5 weeks in that coma while basically living off of the machines. experimental drug was given to me where my heart was almost near death. But prior to that drug, and they even told my parents, and my dad, had to tell my family that he may not make it through the night. When my dad heard that, he was so kind of upset because not only did they tell him that he may not make it through the night, but to prepare for his funeral. And my dad got upset because if this guy still has an ounce of breath in his body, we aren't preparing but for him to get better. And so my dad fired that doctor. I had a team and a panel of doctors around me. My dad fired that guy because he did not want any negativity on this panel about my health. I survived so much up to that point to where, no, he's going to be fine. And sure enough, Jim, I was fine. And that's what they had said, that it was my heart that was about to fail.
Okay, and just so people understand, when we're talking about heart failure, that's your pump, right? The muscles in your heart?
Yes, that's the muscle around my heart, and it's called cardiomyopathy. Again, my heart wasn't pumping enough blood to the rest of my organs. So my organs were thirsty for blood, but my heart wasn't pumping it, so therefore they were shutting down.
Okay. Talk to us about your experiences with rehab, walking, talking, trying to learn how to use your limbs again. What was that all about?
From the induced coma, I remember waking up after 3.5 weeks. I seen the calendar in the room change. I seen my little brother and my sister at the foot of my bed, and I can't hear, but I can see, and they're arguing. And so I didn't know what it was about. And I'm trying to get their attention, but I could not move. All I can do was blink my eyes. And if they weren't looking, they would miss it. They finally saw me and they ran out the room to get the nurses. The nurses, maybe about a week and a half later, but after pulling out tubes from my mouth, tubes from my groin, tubes from my neck, they've realized that I'm ready for rehab now. So they took me to another part of the hospital that I was in this bed that had handles. And I remember I had no voice because of the tube that was down my throat. But I remember trying to lift up and reach for the handles to try to get some strength from it. They had them in my hands, they had them at my feet, and then they encouraged me, try to yell. We don't care if it's in the middle of the night, scream. So here I am in bed, just like that, and nothing's coming out. And to me, the sarcasm that I have, I thought it was kind of funny at the time because I tried to make light of everything that's negative, and seeing me without a voice, knowing that I talked a lot, was kind of funny that, wait a minute, people got their wish that I'm not speaking, but let me try to get my voice back. So I think it took about a month before I was released with a walker, a wheelchair, and also one of those raised toilet seats to where I don't have to bend so far down to use a toilet. It's probably about 6 inches that you put on top to help me use the bathroom. So again, at such a young age, in my early 30s, that wasn't something that I expected the way my life was going to go.
Well, obviously you've overcome all those obstacles. You speak very well, and it seems like you move around fairly decent, right?
I do now. I do now. But in my second kidney failure, I'm very limited now. But I push the limits, Jim. I push it, not just to be an example for myself, but to be an example for anybody going through anything bad, to where, you're going to have a bad day today, but tomorrow's going to be a better day. And so look forward to it. Make something happen. I'm not the type that just because I'm in kidney failure and I'm doing dialysis 5 days a week, I'm not the type that my day ends after that 5 hours. No, I'm going to go out. I'm going to enjoy life with my fiance. I'm going to enjoy life seeing my parents and my family. That's me. And that's what I refuse to not let this illness get the best of me and miss out on all these times.
Okay. You've mentioned a fiance a couple of times. Can you tell us her first name?
Yeah, Chanel. She is actually a lupus warrior and an Army veteran that we came across each other because of the lupus advocacy that I did. And she's just been a blessing to me for understanding everything that I'm going through. I don't have to put on this face or mask because I have to prove to somebody that I'm going to be okay. No. Lupus is a debilitating disease. I fight it in my own way, the way everyone fights it in their way. And she sees the strength in me, which encourages me even more. There isn't any type of judgment from her or anybody that I know now, because they know what I'm going through. The first
Sure.
couple of years diagnosed with lupus, judgment came from everywhere. Everywhere. And you can imagine, you're too young to be tired. You're too young not to be able to do this and that. So judgment came everywhere without knowing the cover.
I understand that at one point in time, you were taking approximately 30 pills every day. Is that
Unfortunately,
correct?
unfortunately, yes. And that was actually after my diagnosis, because with this type of autoimmune disease, you get a lot of side effects. Some of those medications were because of the side effects. And so you're taking pills for your primary problems that you're having, but then the side effects that those have, you have to take pills for that. And everything just came upon me to where I go in the hospital being diagnosed with 0 pills, coming home with a chart that I had to mark off so I don't forget. I was new to taking pills at that time. And it was tough, but it's something that I had to do.
One of the things that I read is that many lupus patients that go through the same types of things that you've gone through experience earth-shaking depression. Please explain to us how you managed to avoid full-fledged depression and what your experiences were with that.
You know, I'm going to tell you that depression, there was a lot of times of feeling depressed, but I never fell into depression, if that makes sense. And let me put it like this. Depression is more of a definition of isolation, desertion, being to yourself, attitude change, mood changes, all of that. I didn't feel like I went into that at all, only because, again, like I said, I tried to make light out of any darkness. So I figured out that if I can survive this episode of lung disease, liver disease, fevers, gout, replacements, then I can beat this in any way. I never felt to where, because I had such a tight family, close friends, I got a best friend that I'm still good friends with from kindergarten to now. I mean, we're talking about 47 years, and this is my partner. We just was out the other day. I'm going to see him tomorrow, supporting me at my lupus walk. So it's things like that that surrounded me to where I can't let nobody see me let this disease beat me. I can't let nobody see me feel like I'm have any type of depression. Unfortunately, in my early years, when somebody asked me, Emmitt, are you okay? The answer was always, I'm okay, always. Even if I felt like I wasn't, because Emmitt is strong. Emmitt can get through it. But now I realize, as time went on and what I've learned, that it is okay to not be okay. It is okay to understand what I'm going through and to be okay with it. Some of us may fall, but I always tell people, you just can't stay down. You can't stay down when you fall. So depression
Okay.
for me wasn't an option. I had 2 kids I was raising. I had a lot going for me. I didn't want nothing to change.
Okay. I want to bring to our audience's attention, if you're interested in learning more about lupus and our good friend Emmitt, go to the broadcast that's pinned to the top of my personal Facebook page. Check out the comments. All the things that we're talking about, there are links in the comments to these things. And his other presentations, his other YouTube videos, the link to Male Lupus Warriors, his Facebook page, his Instagram page, his Twitter, all of that you can find there.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want to drill down a little bit more, learn some stuff about lupus, and learn some things about our buddy Emmitt, that's a great place to look. As a result of your experiences and your desire to help your fellow male lupus patients, you created a not-for-profit, Male Lupus Warriors. Can you tell us a little bit about the decision to create Male Lupus Warriors?
Absolutely, Jim. You know, in 2019, when the brain disease was found, that was the time that from 1995 diagnosed to 2019, I maintained my employment. Despite going through all of that, you know, I was good at what I did. There was no limit on how much time I needed to take off from my health until 2019, the brain disease was found. The doctors gave me medication that would not release me to go back to work. And so that kind of devastated me because work was all I knew and kept me motivated to keep going every single day. And when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to go back to my profession, I was on disability and had time off. And I was thinking, what am I going to do now? This disease finally got the best of me by taking me out of my career. I need to win against this disease. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk and tell my story and let people know what I've been through in these past years to maybe helping somebody else go through what they're going through. I came on the scene and decided to name myself Male Lupus Warriors because when I started to look into lupus group, they were all ran by women. And I listened to them, I learned from them, but I think it's time for men to now, you know, join them in this advocacy in doing it. So I put the word male in my title so people would know that, wait a minute, is this a guy talking about lupus? Let me talk about it and let's find out, because it was rare for men to speak up on it. And so Male Lupus Warriors was created.
Okay. Shout out to my friend Donna Tissot's on the broadcast tonight, saying hello to everybody. So, hi, Donna.
Hey, Donna.
Let's talk about your goals for the group and why it was important for you to become the voice for men with lupus. Why do you publicly advocate and tell your story?
Because there's somebody out there that needs to hear it. There's somebody out there that may have gone through the same thing I've gone through, or worse, or not at all, but needs to hear a lupus story. And lupus story can basically relate to a lot of different autoimmune disease stories. So if somebody is down and out because of some of the things that their, you know, body is putting them through, I mean, I hope that they can read my story and know that it put me through this and that as well. And here I am still, you know, smiling above it. Here I am helping others above it. You know, when I decided to become the voice of lupus, it wasn't me that can do it by myself. I ended up joining up with another guy with lupus from the East Coast. This is my partner named Dion Langley. We created another organization on top of his and mine called the Lupus Dream Team, where now you have two males advocating for lupus, and we bring it to the community to where we've attended events together in different parts of the states. But I think it's one of those things where if other men seeing other men talk about some of the things they go through that is hardships in their lives and they're thriving from it today, then maybe they can do it as well. So for men, you know, we don't need to bottle this stress up. We don't need to suffer in silence. We need to just kind of take on what's going on with us, you know, headstrong, and try to see what we can do to make it better. Because once we're good for everybody. And it goes for women as well.
Okay. I've noticed that you've done a lot of podcasts, broadcasts, getting your story out there. Some recent ones, you did a podcast with Kent Wrestler and Kidney Solutions. You did a broadcast with my old friend, Steve Belcher.
Yes.
Want to talk about that African trip. Do you have any future discussions planned like what we're doing tonight?
Oh, yeah. I actually got one on Monday with another group that I'll be speaking. Groups a month. I'll be speaking on it. And then San Diego, there's an autoimmune convention for rheumatology. Due to my kidney failure now and my health with surgery coming up, a vacation coming up on a cruise, I'm looking forward to 2024 to try to put out some more bigger events in other places, if health permits, of course, and just some new things that I want to bring to uplift so many people in this industry and this community that, you know, just because we have a title of being sick doesn't mean it can't stop us from keep moving.
Okay. Now, when I was doing my research, one of the things that I noticed is that you have many, many, many awards and recognition uh, for your work. Things like interviews on lupus and mental health, men's health, on transplant platforms. You've been on the local news in San Diego. You're hosting your own lupus walk event. You're spreading lupus awareness. You've been featured in written articles and magazines, presented an advocacy award from the state of Georgia for your work in the lupus community, presented a plaque for outstanding advocacy in the San Diego community and from other lupus organizations, another plaque from Inspire San Diego for community work in the city of San Diego. You've been involved in notable positions with different lupus and autoimmune organizations, just to name a few. Male Lupus Warriors Corp nonprofit organization, you're the CEO and founder. The Lupus Dream Team co-founder, you mentioned that. The Autoimmune Community Institute board member, support group facilitator. Gamma Phi Rho Lupus Sorority, you're a board director and vice president. Lupus Foundation of San Diego board director and support group facilitator, and something called the Hugs and Bags organization. Can you tell us a little bit about your achievements and awards? And if I forgot anything, if you want to hold up a plaque or whatever, please let us know what's going on.
When I started this advocacy, it wasn't for fame. It wasn't for popularity. It wasn't for anything like that. It was more just to give back to the community what lupus took away from me. I'm trying to make up for so many down days that lupus had me down in ways that I can help and inspire somebody else. But that very first time I remember that I got a call to say, hey, I'd love to feature you in an interview. I was like, okay, an interview for what? And they were like, well, Emmitt, I mean, what you're doing is spectacular and we want to put it out there. So, okay. And I just kind of flowed with it the very first time. All it takes was one to see that. And next thing you know, I am getting contacted by a lot of these organizations. And for me, it's not the popularity or fame. It's like, well, wait a minute, maybe I can reach an audience that is not mine and I can help somebody through them. And that was my whole point. But when the awards came, the recognition, the stage appearances came, I'll take it. And that just shows me that somebody is seeing and recognizing my work. And for me, that gives me fuel to keep going. Just keep doing it.
Okay. I want to ask you about this first kidney transplant. You mentioned where it happened and that your younger brother was the donor. What's your younger brother's first name?
Manny. That's my brother, Manny.
Want to give some props to Manny.
My life.
All right. I understand that you took a trip recently to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Can you tell us a little bit about that trip and what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I got privileged to be asked to join an organization to Africa to bring lupus awareness and to make lupus visible was the campaign. And part of it was the bonus of being able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So I was looking so forward to it. And when it finally came, I was surprised to find out I had a 9-hour layover in Egypt. So you know what we did, Uncle Jim? We saw the pyramids, we saw the Sphinx. Scratch that off my bucket list. That was such a beautiful memory that I had. I remember talking to Chanel the day before the hike, and we did a small mini hike up to a waterfall just to get a little practice walk in before the actual climb. And I remember telling her, I was like, she noticed I'm breathing a little heavy. And I was like, well, I don't notice too much, but I noticed that I'm getting a little tired on this little climb, and that's usually not me. So the very same night, I had a really good night rest. We knew Kilimanjaro was coming that next day. We got set off, and out of the 19,000 feet, I got up to about 17, and I felt like I could not breathe at all. I felt like I was drowning in fluid, but yet I was still above water. I was in air. It's just that I ended up suffering from high altitude pulmonary edema. And there was a doctor that was on the climb, and they suggested I do not go any further. That because of my condition with my failure in lungs previously, my heart problems, lupus, they didn't want to take a chance. So I agreed. As much as I hated to agree, I did agree because this was my life now that we're talking about. So I ended up coming down. Fast forward, I get back into the States almost 2 weeks later, thinking that I'm going to get treated at the hospital for lung failure because I was still feeling sick and hard to breathe, to only tell me that not only am I in lung failure, but I'm also in kidney failure as well. And that took a toll on me because my previous kidney lasted 9.5 years on one kidney, which was doing fine. But let me kind of put something onto this, Jim. We kind of concluded, and so did the doctor, that the symptoms I was having prior to going to Africa, which I thought was a lupus flare, was my kidney failure. It's just that climbing that mountain exaggerated and expedited the symptoms even more because of the lung failure. So my kidneys did not fail on that mountain. It failed. It was failing prior to it. It's just that the climb, again, just exaggerated the symptoms even more and put me in full kidney failure by the time I got into the hospital back here in the States.
Okay. And you're currently on dialysis?
Yes, sir. Here's a story with that, Jim. I started, because of my previous experience with peritoneal dialysis, I started with that. 3.5 months later, my peritoneal failed. So I had to go to hemodialysis, which is a catheter they put on my right side of my left side of my chest first. That failed. Then they put one on my right side. That failed. Jim, 9 catheters later, that all failed, including a fistula. I'm working on my 10th one now, which is in my opposite arm, that they got to do reconstructive surgery to move a vein to be my new dialysis access point. Right now, I'm using a temporary one in my growing, which is highly chance for infection. So they want to stop that as soon as possible. So I just keep praying that this one doesn't fail until my arm matures.
Okay. We're talking about home hemodialysis now?
Yes, sir. I have a machine here in my living room. They provided me with a nice chair, and me and Chanel, we do the dialysis on a daily, 5 days a week.
Your fiance, she sticks you?
Oh, yeah. She sticks me.
Okay. It's also my understanding that you're going for a second kidney transplant, correct?
Yes, I am. I've been campaigning to try to get a new second. Well, actually, this will be my 4th kidney. My 2 original failed. My 3rd one failed. So I am looking for a new kidney, second kidney transplant, so I can stop dialysis and get me back to a healthier life.
Okay. Are you listed at a transplant center at this time?
I am. I am listed at the Sharp Memorial Pancreas and Kidney Transplantation unit here in San Diego, center in San Diego. And if anybody is watching this and feel they have a way that they can help me expedite my way of getting a kidney to be my donor, please contact me direct. And we'll talk about my handles and my contact information here. But I am in need of a kidney to save my life, to continue doing my advocacy work, to continue to being the man that I am once, was a healthier man. But it means a lot to me to give back, to serve the community and my family.
Okay. And you have a transplant coordinator at your transplant center?
I do. Her name is Jackie Amas here in the San Diego Sharp Transplant or Kidney and Pancreas Transplant Center. Again, you could reach me for that, or Jim as well, and we can get you all that information direct.
Okay. You're also working with Kent Bressler and Miss Mulroy from Kidney Solutions to help you find a donor?
You know, they are heaven sent. Those people at Kidney Solutions, you know, opened up a door for me that I thought I had to do so much on my own, but they made it easy to help me with advertising, to put me out there. And so, you know, Ken and Shannon, thank you guys so much for that. I really appreciate Kidney Solutions.
Okay. And we have that on the broadcast. The number to call is 830-285-2140. That's 830-235-2140. Or you can contact them on their website, www.kidneysolutions.org. And I'm sorry, Shannon, I don't know why I messed up your first name. I'm old and sick. I make mistakes. What can I say? Let's talk about the purpose of Male Lupus Warriors. What do you feel the purpose is?
You know, I think the purpose is to let the small population of men with autoimmune diseases be okay with what they're going through, because it took me so many years to get out of denial. It took me so many years to admit and happily say, you know what, I got an illness, but I'm okay with it. And I think there's more men that are going through a lot right now, and then women as well, that again, if my purpose of coming out with my story, letting everybody know that with everything that I've been through that they heard on this show, and here I am being able to talk about it, smile about it, and enhance people's, you know, lives and inspiration about it, then there's hope. There's hope. You know, less chance of falling into depression. The state doesn't need more people sick because of depression. We don't need any of that. We need more people to be strong within ourselves. If I can show that somehow and get to people to where they can see me more as a motivator and somebody that give them inspiration to just do one stronger thing than they did yesterday, Male Lupus Warriors did his job. Male Lupus Warriors comes complete.
Okay. Is it okay if I disclose where you guys are located, your contact info?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have the address 5412 Adobe Falls Road, San Diego, California, 92120. Telephone number 619-200-1952. Do I have the contact information correct?
That is correct. And if I could also throw my email in there, which is the best way to get a hold of me, is malelupuswarriors@gmail.com.
Okay. And folks, they're on Instagram, Facebook, they're even on TikTok. So it's not hard to find these guys.
No, we're not. The Lupus Dream Team also holds a once a month meeting for men, men only. You know, I thought it was time for us to have our space. So me and Dion put together that Men with Lupus. And I'm going to tell you right now, Uncle Jim, that is one of the best meetings that I say I'm happy to have, you know, moderate with, because to see men open up and tell us, we tell you guys things we don't tell our partners. We talk about our feelings, but we don't tell nobody else. Again, that makes us feel complete. That's what we want. That's what we want. So I'm proud of that part of our organization.
Talk to us a little bit about your future plans for Male Lupus Warriors. I understand there's a walk on Monday.
No, there's a lupus walk here in San Diego tomorrow. So if any guys from San Diego, you want to come out and meet me and walk with me and share your stories with me, I will be there. I will be there to support the Lupus Research Alliance and the Lupus Southern California chapter here in San Diego.
Tell us a little bit about what you're up to in the future. You mentioned there are some things going on near the end of the year, some things you're anticipating in 2024. Everything subject to your health, of course, but the things you can tell us about.
Well, one of the events that I look forward to in February is one where a good close sister of mine named LaShawn Garullo and the Gamma Pi Rho part of is hosting a Lupus Love event that we do annually. And this one just has to do with some of the topics that have to come up with lupus, love, relationships, single, married. So that's a very interesting topic that is not talked about much, but when it is, oh man, they come full-fledged on that one. So I'm looking forward to that one. The Lupus Dream Team, for me and Dion, we're probably hoping to get more into other cities and states to talk about men with lupus and how, you know, we can kind of encourage men from there. There's a secret about a big project with me that I can't say much on, and it all has to unfold. But when it does, it's going to be huge. And all I can say is one thing: ESPN. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, make sure that when you post on social media, you send that big project to your Uncle Jim, and I'll spread it around for you a little bit.
Gotcha. Got you.
All right. Is there any statement you would like to make to our audience tonight before we close the discussion?
One thing that I like to say is that I am in the process of writing my own book, this would be the second book that I'm coming out with. The first book was The Power in Men, and how 11 African-American men got together to tell their stories from hardships to thriving today. And I am part of that, which I'm proud of. The statement that I'd like to say is the title of the book that I am doing. And basically, Uncle Jim, you covered a lot, but this one's going to be titled How I Turned My Pain into Power. And what I mean by that is lupus is being the pain for the past 28 and a half years of my life, and how I'm flipping it to where it's going to work for me and the community that I serve. And what I mean work for, it means that we are going to beat lupus in a lot of different ways. And if my voice can be a help to let people know and encourage them that they can beat their illness and their sickness, then you're turning your pain into your own power. We all have our own power. We just don't want our pain to get over it. So we have to do what we can as a community to support each other, letting everybody know that that no one fights this battle alone. No one is alone in this. And it doesn't matter whether it's from lupus or multiple sclerosis or diabetes or any other scleroderma. It doesn't matter what autoimmune disease or disease it is. Somebody's out there always willing to hear you. When you are being heard, we know that you don't necessarily need a reply. Just the fact that you know you have an ear that's listening to you is enough right there to just make your day. It makes mine. So let's keep each other in company, keep each other work. Let's keep each other in contact. Reach out to those people that know that they need a simple hello, because it makes a big difference in their lives.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, Emmitt, and sharing your story with us, answering all my silly questions, and raising the level of education and awareness for lupus and your male counterparts. And hopefully we help some people tonight. By the way, your friend Kent Bresler's on, and he's saying blessings to you on your journey, and that he loves the fact that you're such a mentor for your cause. So
thank you, Kent,
and many thanks to Kent for making the referral, so I get the opportunity to speak to Emmitt tonight. So
yes, thank you.
That's our broadcast for this evening. You've given me an hour of your time, Emmitt. I'm going to let you go. I got a few things to button up with the audience, but I just want to say what a terrific job you did. I learned so much tonight about lupus and your experiences, and you do make a wonderful lupus warrior.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Means a lot coming from you.
All right. Thank you, buddy. All right, everybody. That's our broadcast for this evening. We're on again next week. I'm going to say this much about that. I have a friend who's currently speaking at Kidney Week, who's going to come on. He's been on before. He's going to come on with his mom. So we're going to get the whole story, mom and all. And I don't want you to miss out on that. And all right. So that's our show for this week. Thanks again to our friend Emmitt. Thanks again to our friends Kent and Shannon. I'm sorry, Shannon, I messed up the name bad, Uncle Jim. There'll be a new Uncle Jim in the morning. So, all right, guys, that's our show for tonight. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.